Hello, Leo. Hey, Leo. Just had to get some coffee. All right. So this month for you come in, and actually it's kind of perfect timing because by the time I do this, the full moon will be right there. We'll be right at this full moon in Aries. So very shortly, I don't have the dates right in front of me. Excuse me. But you'll have this full moon in Aries. And everything that you wanted to say or that you will say or that needs to come out is going to come out of you. And it's in a way where you're almost provoked by Gemini and Mars. So that energy is basically almost saying to you to get out what you need to get out. So, and in doing that, what happens? Well, before we even get into that, I just want to say that it's been a long time coming. There are some things that people don't realize as a Leo you can hold back sometimes. Or there's certain things that you allow as opposed to the things you don't allow, depending on the person in your life and how much maybe attention they give to you, which is the basis of a good friendship, right? Like communication and everything. So likewise, a Aries in your life may come to you because Aries is very strong. The Emperor and the Fool right there. And Aries may happen to come to you, and if you're in a relationship or if this is a friendship, a business, something in work, they may come to you and ask you for more freedom or say that they need more freedom or just have a conversation about your friendship. Libra season or October is a lot about relationships. There is a lot in Libra. We're about to move into Libra by the end of the month, more towards when this will be out. Now, it's important for you to remember what's important to you. And I think we talked about we definitely talked about in the beginning, where you want to stay, or I talked about with someone, I apologize. You find the things that are really important to you and you stick firm to them. However, you may have felt a little bit more alone than normal recently. And you may find that it's because of how you work or how you deal with certain things in your life. So now you're going to begin to address, and those things are coming to you, and even the conversations being brought to you are exactly what you need. So anything that happens, regardless if it's positive or negative, I think you're going to see it in the positive for the most part and realize that it's what you need and what your life needs to be more free, be more open, to address these things and say these things in a way that could somewhat feel uncomfortable for you. What's wrong? My cat is meowing. What's the matter? And it's coming to a heat. It's coming to a culmination. It's coming to this realization that, and this can happen and be a result of basically detoxing or letting something out that you've been holding in for a while, or things coming out. It's like sometimes when you get acne on your face, or sometimes when you feel irritated or you feel hot, or you go through those moments of internal like agony and trouble because things are changing, and you know that, but being that it's changing in the season of air, it's different because the feelings don't always come right away, or they hit you like a ton of bricks in the middle of like doing something with people, and you're like, holy shit, like I need to leave, or I need space. But the thing is about you guys is that if you're just, maybe you find the right person at that place, at that party, at that thing, or whoever you're with, maybe it's because that's when it needs to happen. And you're no stranger to being vulnerable in front of people, but it's very obvious to you where these vulnerabilities are in terms of this month, like with those people, that there are some things that have, whatever naturally comes out of this conversation or the situation in this part of you that like is stubborn about certain things, which is nothing wrong with that, but you're now noticing where it's maybe not giving you as much freedom, and whatever you're speaking up up about is really important. Now, Mars is in Gemini, which gives you that freedom to kind of see things. It's not just about talking, but you see how you communicate with everything around you, how you deal with social media, what kind of movies or TV you watch. All of those things are kind of intertwined, and you're starting to feel like you need something different in your life. Perhaps you need is different for inspiration. So you find yourself being maybe even bored with certain things or over certain things and wanting something, just a little bit of a change. And it causes, any kind of change like this can cause like reactions or responses like this, because this is normal. It's like the anger is coming out of you, the frustration's coming out of you because something's changing or something's shifting, that sometimes that whatever pent up energy you've been holding on to is going to come out of you. Letting it out productively is important, because you come and you find yourself in situations, and we'll go back to it in a second, but you'll find yourself in situations where you have been before, but you find yourself a lot more grounded. And yeah, some say that Leos are natural at that, but it's not always the case. So I do see us becoming more of our sun signs in this life. So it's not always normal to feel this way, right? Like you're becoming more of this Leo archetype if you want to associate yourself with that. There's also this way of finding your life path card in your tarot deck, which a Leo showed me, which is really cool. So you might relate more, that might be more your vibe. And actually it reminds me of your life path number. It actually mine end up being the same. I don't know if it's like that for everyone. So mine is the strength card. Mine is like very in tune with Leo, which also happens to be my 5th house. So what I can say is that sometimes you don't realize where your weaknesses are because you don't maybe have enough people around you to help you see those in a way that is important sometimes. I'm not saying that you want to keep around that person that likes to point out and criticize you. That's not the truth, but it's important to know and have people that you can have that feedback with, because if not, you find yourself in the same situation and it's even worse than the last time. But that's not what's happening now. What's happening now is you're beginning to understand what gets you inside of your head sometimes. You may have been asking yourself, like, where certain insecurities come from over the past year, and realizing and becoming a little bit more detached to it being so personal, which is great, because then it's easier for even you to be quicker with certain things that you want to be quicker with, gain more confidence, which in turn like can shed any certain fears that you've been thinking about. And you're starting to realize this more and more, because first it becomes this like thing in your head, and then it makes you wake up thinking about it possibly, or going to bed thinking about it, and you're just like, I don't want to think about this all the time. And then it's like, okay, now I can't even, this is just clouding my judgment. But because, and this is not all the time, but sometimes it's because you need to acknowledge it first. Things don't go away sometimes until you acknowledge it, even compassion, be like, okay, I'll hear you out. Insecurity, like your insecurities, instead of it coming at you in every which direction. But it's the end of this huge cycle that's been happening for you for a while, and what people don't even realize about you guys sometimes. And now that Mercury has gone direct, it feels a lot clearer to explain, and I think that's why I needed to wait, because during your reading, your first part, I gotta be honest, I was a little confused. So you guys might have been feeling confused too, but it now feels a lot clearer. This King of Pentacles is really important because the Devil and the King of Pentacles next to each other is making you realize that Pluto is in Capricorn right now, and it's been going through it for a while, which is very different, and it's this transforming part of these structures that have held us up for a while. And sometimes if you fall back just a step, it feels a lot greater than it actually is, because it's very Capricorn like. And what's important for you to remember is that whether there's a Capricorn in your life or not, they've been helpful to show you that balancing these sides of you is very important. Whether they're extreme about it or not, they're very capable. They always come back. They always come back up. And even if they've, and some of them really do deal with, depending on the ones or people who have these, depending on the placements, but it's been someone that you've been able to maybe converse with equally as a Sagittarius in your life. They're equally as important. It's funny because I didn't even pull any cards for this. Oh my God. This is crazy. This card's supposed to be pulling cards, but I think we went through it really in depth anyway. So essentially, and I think I'm just going to roll with it, what you're realizing now is that this is all for what you're building, and you see it in a way that is maybe more Capricorn-like. And you're seeing what kind of freedom it brings you to keep your eye in the future and yet stay present. Give yourself what you can afford and give yourself the time you can afford with people, and realizing that this time you can't really afford right now. And what do I mean by that? You can't afford suppressing it because it's taking more energy than it actually needs to. So that's why it's so much more easy for you, because you realize, especially in the past few years, that certain things have kept you really internal and very trapped, feeling like you're trapped, and you don't want to feel that way. You want to be able to do and spend as you please. So realizing these things can change the way you maybe do business, or maybe you take up a side gig, or maybe you get a raise you're open for a raise or whatever it is, or a better position or something like that at your job, and you kind of didn't even realize it, and then all of a sudden this is coming together. And for those of you who have realized it, you decide to do the inner work. Why? Because it's really helpful for you, and it helps you figure out, because a couple months ago in your season you may have figured out that something needed a shift. You needed a shift somewhere. Like there's something about you that felt inauthentic, and sometimes we don't know right away what it is. And Leo's not opposed to seeing that side. It's just harder to see it while you're in front of everybody else, and everybody else is like looking at you or looking to you. And what this changes is your relationship with, oh, hi baby. Sorry, my cat just jumped up. Is your relationship with, again, Pluto coming back up with the death card, but also Scorpio season coming, and we'll get into that. It's just like you find this very intuitive part of you that is extremely vulnerable and can only be shown through revealing these different parts to you, and especially to yourself. And it comes up when you're more disciplined with certain aspects, because then you realize again where your quote-unquote weaknesses are. And it's okay, because everybody has weaknesses in terms of different aspects in their life that they need to grow. And again, some of you might take this and leave it, but this is a big way to clear up some space, because a lot of times we don't realize that we need, even especially if you see it like segue or side thing, like remember, if you see people, I don't know if you look on Instagram or if you follow anyone and you see people, or the quintessential people that you see in movies who start to make more money, especially in the modern day, but they seem to have less things. They seem to become more simple. That's what you're finding, especially if you're someone who tends to be more extravagant with things, or you're finding that you really want to declutter a lot in your life, and that means your insides too. And it may take a moment, but you're not afraid, because there's something that you've taken with you along the way here. You may have realized that it's more important to go through this part that is and can be a little bit more messy and difficult, if it helps you find your specific structure, if it helps you find the space that you need for yourself, so that you can so that you can see what it is that maybe has stopped that part from showing itself more before, because you have great instincts. However, something's been missing. There's something you've missed too many times for you to be like, okay, now this part, I don't know what has happened, but this attunement with your intuition and the instincts have, started to show like short-circuiting. It's like not working properly. It's not going all the way through. And you realize through the series of communications and situations that you're even responding differently, or you're noticing that you want to respond differently, and it's a great thing for you. Whether it's you need to be more assertive in an extent, or if you need to, talk things through or think things through or ask more questions. That could be another way you assert yourself, because you're basically finding out more that you need to know before jumping into something, and stating your needs specifically, especially now that you know more about them than ever, that it becomes easier for you to determine when sometimes you're feeling a certain way, or you feel agitated or whatever it is, that you know you just need to balance it out with something in this season, because it's just equally as good and rewarding as it is showing and preparing for Scorpio season. Now, it can seem a bit fluffy sometimes. However, there's this, when I find that one sign is personally going through a personal, like, deeper transformation, and like really taking off that layer, whenever we're in that sign's energy, like in the season, so we're in Libra season, that's happening with them, everyone starts to feel it in a certain way. So this month can feel very confusing at first, and then, which can sometimes be the honest truth too, but then there's this clarity that happens when Mercury goes direct, and you realize that we're in all these retrogrades, and you can kind of see it around you, giving yourself a little bit more of a break. But at the same time, it's because you allow that, you can also let these things happen more naturally, and you don't feel like you have to address them right away or rush them too much. It just, everything starts to have its own timing, and it's working out the way it needs to. And you may want to even talk these things through with someone before you actually do it. Why? Well, it could help hear you out the first time, for like practice. It's just like practicing for anything, honestly. Sometimes I talk to myself about the season and what I'm going, or what's changing in my life, before I get into these videos, so I can have more of a perspective. And I notice, and also noticing where different people in my life may be going through it too. And what becomes clear to you is that you're able to be more open and outright with yourself about your creativity, about your wants, about what the future you want the future to look like. However, it's still just as great now as it will be. And because you're there's this ideal, and this idea that you have in your head, see these two very drawn, and you're being seen even more, which is a great thing. And it reminds you of the power that you hold whenever you recognize this part of yourself, instead of suppressing it or denying it, and you find yourself having more fun and feeling more free in your joy than you have maybe in a while. And it's very obvious to you how the people are reacting around you or responding around you, but it's also giving you a ton of energy, which is really important towards the end of the month, because all this shit that's changing, yeah, you feel like shit at first, just like a detox or a cleanse, and all of a sudden maybe you want to do one, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's very obvious that you want to share certain things, especially the things that are coming out of you now, that have come out of you this month. And it might be that people really respond and listen well to that, because a lot has poured out of you, and you're much less afraid of that judgment this month, perhaps, or much more aware of how much you want to appear a certain way, which is your relation with Libra, similar thing, and instead letting that go and realizing that you become the art. right? This is one thing that I will always live by and that I think can help anyone is like, it's just like wearing tattoos. You don't have to have tattoos to wear your art. That's why I like clothes or expressing yourself, but that could also be through who you are, your stories that you tell, what you're going through. That's like the art that is you. That's what you're going through at any given time. And letting that out more in a way that's helpful is shown to be extremely receptive this month, especially towards the end of the month as we get more into the intimate side of things with Scorpio and more of the hidden things come out. Now, if you go through all of this month and like give it room, give it space and allow it, there's so many good things that happen along the way that you take it in such a raw way that it's so imprinted in those like core memories in you, and that's what anyone could want, right? It just allows for more joy, more space, letting go of more things, maybe expressing things that you've been wanting to, but you were waiting till you got more towards the Page of Swords. Like the King of Swords and the Queen of Swords are helpful. However, they demand this respect that not always received, and you can demand it all you want, and that's fine. But when you're having certain conversations that are very personal, it's more about just letting it out as you are. And sometimes you can feel like a teenager. It feels like you're a teenager explaining these things because they're so, even if you're an adult, that part of you that just feels so naturally, which is, I think, in our very like young teen years, everything's so much more extreme, that you may even relate to that part of life a lot more. You may find yourself wanting to work with that kind of group, even like just for some of you, which is very intuitive. But yeah, Leo, that is like a very much more in depth to the season and going into Scorpio season. A lot just washes clean, and you may even feel lighter and more shiny than ever by that season, even if it doesn't feel like it right away. All right, see you next month.